Furutani, Gaines, Galgiani, Garrick, Gatto, Gordon, Gurrell, Grove, Hagman, Halderman, Hall, Harkey, Hayashi, Hernandez, Hill, Huber, Waso, Huffman, Jeffries, Jones, Knight, Lara, Logue, Lowenthal, Ma, Mansour, Mendoza, Miller, Mitchell, Monning, Morrell, Nistande, Nielsen, Norby, Olson, Pan, Perea, V. Manuel Perez, Portantino, Silva, Skinner, Smythe, Solorio, Swanson, Torres, Valadeo, Wagner, Wykowski, Williams, Yamada, Mr. Speaker.
The sergeants will call in the absent members. A quorum is present. As part of our observation of Black History Month, we have a guest chaplain with us today. He's Pastor Rick Currington of the Pearly Gates Church of God in Christ in Stockton, California. We ask our guests and visitors in the rear of chambers and in the gallery to please stand for the prayer. Pastor Currington.
Shall we pray? Thank you for the privilege to stand here to offer this prayer as we celebrate Black History Month with the California Legislature. We thank thee for the contributions that African Americans have made to world history, be they in innovation, political advocacy, commerce, law, medicine, the sciences, and all fields of human endeavor. We thank thee for the Tuskegee Airmen who broke down the barriers of inequality in the United States Air Forces that led to opportunities not only in our military services, but so many other areas that are afforded to our children today. And as we honor the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen and the Black Americans, let us be reminded that this, the People's House, is a place for the advancement of justice, the security of peace, and the furthering of hope. And all who found agreement said, Amen.
We ask our guests and visitors to remain standing and join us in the flag salute. Assemblymember Carter will lead us in the pledge. You may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now hear from our guest vocalist, Miss Ailadree Elmore, who will perform the Negro National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing, by James Weldon Johnson. Ms. Elmore. And the lyrics are on the inside page of your program if you wish to join along with Ms. Elmore.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won.
Now you may be seated. Reading of the previous day's journal.
Assembly Chamber, Sacramento, Thursday, February 16, 2012. The Assembly met at 9 Honorable Fiona Ma, Speaker Pro Tem of the Assembly, presiding. Chief Clerk E. Dawson Wilson.
Mr. Calderon moves and Ms. Conway seconds that the reading of the previous day's journal be dispensed with. Presentation of petitions, there are none. Introduction and references of bills will be deferred. Reports of committees will be deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. Messages from the governor, there are none. Messages from the Senate, there are none. Motions and resolutions. The absence of the day will be deemed read and printed in the journal. Mr. Keldron, you're recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 118 to allow Assemblymember Davis to have guests at the rostrum and in the area of the members' dais, as well as a photographer on the floor for the Assembly observance of Black History Month, and to allow Assemblymember Lowenthal to have a guest seated at her desk.
Without objection.
Likewise, I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 45.5 to allow Assembly members Knight, Compost, and Norby to speak on Adjourn in Memory.
Without objection. Pursuant to Assembly Rule 77.2, I'm re-referring the following bills to committee. File Item 3, AB 324, Buchanan, to Appropriations. Mr. Calderon.
I request unanimous consent to suspend Joint Rule 62A, file notice requirements to allow the Appropriations Committee to meet and to hear AB 324 by Ms. Buchanan today, February 23, 2012, upon the call of the chair in the Rules Committee room.
Without objection.
And finally, Mr. Speaker, I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 63 to allow Ms. Mitchell to take up File Item 1, H.R. 22, without reference to file for purposes of third reading today. H.R. 22 relates to Black History Month.
Without objection. Second reading. Clerk will read.
House Resolution 22 with amendments and Senate Concurrent Resolution 62 with amendments.
All bills are deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. Members will now move to the Assembly observance of Black History Month by taking up a special resolution. Permission was previously granted for Ms. Mitchell to take up File Item 1, H.R. 22, without reference to the file for the purpose of third reading. Ms. Mitchell, the clerk will read.
House Resolution 22 by Assemblymember Mitchell and others relative to Black History Month.
Ms. Mitchell, you may open on your measure.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker and members. I'm proud to stand before you today to present H.R. 22, which declares the month of February 2012 as Black History Month. American history is rich with inspirational stories of great African American men and women whose actions, words, and achievements have united Americans and contributed to the success and prosperity of our entire country. We are all aware of the tragic circumstances that brought African Americans to the States. Countless lives were lost during the Middle Passage. For those of us who survived, a life of brutal slavery awaited. Slavery has left an undeniable, ugly scar on our nation's history. Despite this cruel past, African Americans have risen to great heights, serving our country in the military and as public servants. Indeed, during the Reconstruction period, 2 African Americans served in the U.S. Senate and 14 served in the House of Representatives. We've had great leaders who have greatly influenced American history in the arts, science, medicine, business, education, government, and social leadership. While there are too many to name, there are names that you will recognize and some that you may not. Names like W.E.B. Du Bois, Zora Neale Hurston, Langston Hughes, Fannie Lou Hamer, Sojourner Truth, Matthew Hansen, Daniel Hale Williams, Barbara Jordan, Charles Drew, President Barack Obama, First Lady Michelle Obama. This is a rich history that we are proud to honor and recognize as an integral part of American history. On a personal note, as the daughter of a man who served his country in the segregated armed services during the Second World War, I'm particularly honored to recognize the men and women who joined us on the floor of this House today. So members, please join me in supporting this resolution in honor of Black History Month, February 2012. I'd like the first open roll call to be for co-authors, please, Mr. Speaker, and I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Any members seeking recognition? Seeing and hearing none, the first roll will be open for co-authors. Clerk will post. First roll is for co-authors. First roll is for co-authors. Close the roll. We have 68 co-authors on the measure. We will now take a voice vote on this bill. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The resolution is adopted. Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your leadership. We will now begin our special ceremony in observation of Black History Month. In the early 1940s, a program known as the Tuskegee Experiment began to train black combat pilots. Collectively, those participated in the effort are known as the Tuskegee Airmen. Their formal name, the 332nd Fighter Group, and it was comprised of the 99th, the 100th, the 301st, and 302nd Fire Squadrons. These squadrons were very successful, particularly at escorting Allied bomber planes deep into enemy territory, although 66 of their pilots were killed in action during World War II. After the war, the participants went on to further careers in the United States Armed Forces or returned to civilian life. Colonel George S. Spanky Roberts was a part of the inaugural class of the Tuskegee Airmen. With us today, members of the Spanky Roberts chapter of the Tuskegee Airmen Incorporated, the chapter here in Sacramento, California. Speaker Perez has appointed a select committee on escort to bring our very special guests forward to their seats. Please retire to the rear of the chamber as I call your name. Assemblymember Bradford, Assemblymember Calderon, Assemblymember Cook, Assemblymember 4, and Assemblymember Cook. Those are those that we have here today.
Mr. Hall's back there, too.
It's Mr. Hall back there. Also add Mr. Hall. Please welcome Tuskegee Airmen. Our first guest, Master Sergeant Judge Albert. With 30 years and 11 months of service, he is escorted by Assemblymember Stephen Bradford. Second guest, First Lieutenant Milford Craig. He rendered 27 years of service, escorted by Majority Leader Charles Calderon. Guest 3, Master Sergeant George Hudson, Jr. He's not here. Okay. Guest 4, Technical Sergeant Boyd Taylor. Next guest, Senior Master Sergeant George Porter. He gave 23 years of service and is escorted by Colonel Cook and Assemblymember Hall. Our other guests from Tuskegee Airmen, seated on the floor. First, Mr. Walter Suggs, president of the George Spanky Roberts chapter of Tuskegee Airmen here in Sacramento, California. Thank you. Mrs. Edith Roberts, the widow of Colonel George Spanky Roberts. Ms. Betty Davis, the daughter of Major Herman Ace Lawson. A family member from the Hobbs family, the Chief Master Sergeant Calvin Hobbs, who served 21 years of service to Tuskegee Airmen, is also here. Mr. Michael Harrison, son of Major James Harrison, who served 21 years in Tuskegee Airmen. Mrs. Cara Johnson, widow of Captain Alvin Johnson, 30 years of service to Tuskegee Airmen. Mr. David Smith, son of Colonel James B. Smith, who gave 26 years of service to Tuskegee Airmen. Mrs. Alma Wilson, widow of Senior Master Sergeant Robert Bicycle Wilson, who gave 30 years of service to Tuskegee Airmen. Ms. Robin Matthews, daughter of Dr. Robert Matthews, who was a cadet with Tuskegee Airmen. At this time, I ask Assembly Speaker John A. Perez and Republican leader Connie Conway to join me at the center aisle for a presentation, a specially prepared resolution to Mr. Walter Suggs, the president of the Spanky Roberts chapter of Tuskegee Airmen here in Sacramento, California. Thank you. Okay, we have some additional Tuskegee Airmen joining us for the picture with the speaker. Thank you very much. The additional air escort from the Tuskegee Airmen, Mr. James Coleman and Colonel Crump. Thank you.
Okay, members, we've got another file item. File item 7, ACR 101. Clerk will read.
Assembly concur in Resolution 101 by Assemblymember Lara and others relative to Teen Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month.
Mr. Lara.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Speaker, and members. On September 30th, 17-year-old Cindy Santana was fatally stabbed by Abraham Lopez, her 18-year-old estranged boyfriend, on their high school campus during lunchtime in the city of Southgate and Southeast High School. While trying to intervene, a school administrator and another student were also injured in this tragedy. In the wake of this unfortunate circumstance and countless others that remind us that we must take action to bring attention to this growing problem that has dire consequences for our youth throughout California and the nation. I am here today joined by Assemblymember Fiona Ma to introduce ACR 101, which would declare February 2012 as Teen Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month. ACR 101 brings attention to teen dating violence and calls upon parents, youth, school, and communities to work together to raise awareness about teen dating violence and support young people in learning the skills to have safe and healthy relationships. Madam Chair, I respectfully request that the roll be open for co-authors. Thank you.
Mr. Norby.
I have some concerns about this that I want to share with the author. Perhaps he could respond. I'll be laying off this and not voting for it one way or the other. But I think we've got to give teenagers more credit than this gives them. It says that this is a growing problem. Well, first of all, dating itself is virtually obsolete. In fact, there was a headline story in Newsweek about a year ago saying the end of dating. Kids really don't date anymore like we used to know it. They meet at the mall, they go other places. So the term dating, I think, should be deleted. Also, the growing problem of violence. Violence among teenagers is actually down. I know we like to demonize them on this floor and put more and more restrictions on them. But according to the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, violence among teenagers is down by 50% since 1995 and down 12% since 2006. So I know it's always great to talk about how worse the teenagers are than when we were teenagers, but in fact, in some ways, they're better off and they're more peaceful. The programs that have been introduced in the school system on the so-called healthy relationships are very problematical. As a former public school teacher who's been subjected to many of these things, they're of very doubtful academic value. And while we all oppose violence, which is already illegal, and murder, which is illegal, and all these other things which are already illegal, this goes beyond that and stigmatizes what oftentimes is the normal give and take that happens in any relationship, including a marital relationship. Violence is one thing, it's illegal, but this proposition goes on to talk about emotional abuse, verbal abuse. I mean, anyone who's ever been in a give and take relationship can claim that, but how do you regulate it, and how do you bring the long arm of the law into it? Before we vote on this, let's at least give our teens credit. There is no outbreak. There is no epidemic. There is no increase. In fact, I think teens are healthier and less violent than they've ever been, and the facts back it up.
Ms. Buchanan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and colleagues. I rise in favor of this resolution. The problem with emotional abuse and verbal abuse is too often it leads to physical abuse. I have a very good friend who is a teacher in our school district, and his niece was murdered as a result of a very bad relationship with a boyfriend that she tried to break off. She was not aware of the signs, neither were her parents, and it was a tragic loss. Today, her mother and my friend, the mother's twin brother, go around talking about teen violence and do all they can to make people aware of this issue. We had a program in our schools that was sponsored by a group organization called Stand for Domestic Violence. It was You Can't Win, with violence. It was brought into our middle schools. It was very well accepted, not only by staff, but by parents, by the PTA, by the students. So I think this is an important issue, and bringing awareness is something that we can't talk about enough, because if you can break the cycle of violence at a very young age, you break it permanently, not only for that generation, but for future generations, and I urge a yes vote.
Mr. Calderon.
I rise briefly in support of this measure. I think it's particularly important for us to focus on mental and emotional abuse. Given what we have seen in terms of bullying of teens and deaths that have occurred, but also to recognize that in today's society, anyone can say anything about you, even if it's false. And by the time you try and sort it out, it doesn't matter anymore. But the pain is still there. The wounds are still there. I think this is a good resolution. I ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, Mr. Lara, you may close.
Thank you, members. I appreciate the discussion. And just to reiterate, this resolution calls for additional resources and training so that our teens can have healthy relationships. It does not talk or demonize our teens. We know they are young, they need their services, and this just simply calls for that. So thank you so much. I appreciate the discussion.
Okay, clerk will open the roll. First roll is open for co-authors. Co-authors, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. It's for co-authors. Clerk will close the roll. For the record, there are 65 co-authors, and we can take a voice vote on this item. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The measure is adopted. Okay, that concludes the business on the daily file. We will now move to announcements and adjourn in memories. Mr. Knight, for an adjourn in memory. Mr. Knight. Okay, we're going to go to announcements. The Appropriations Committee will meet immediately upon adjournment to hear AB 324 Buchanan today upon call of the chair. In room 3162. 3162. The session schedule is as follows: Wednesday, February 22nd, check-in session. Thursday, February 23rd, floor session at 9 a.m. All other items remaining will be passed and retained. All other motions shall be continued. Mr. Knight.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Today I'd like to adjourn the session in memory of a good friend of our families. Captain Tom Kraft succumbed to Alzheimer's and some complications with Alzheimer's about a week ago. Captain Kraft was a military man of 30 years, retired from the United States Navy. But what I will always remember Captain Kraft as, in 1992, a young city councilman named George Runner and a young assemblyman, maybe not so young, named Pete Knight, drafted him to be the spokesman for a veterans home to come to the Antelope Valley. For 17 years, Captain Kraft took that mission and was relentless up here in Sacramento and talking to the Department of Veterans Affairs. And in 2009, Captain Kraft won the battle, and he got a veterans home in the city of Lancaster, and we are very, very proud of that. So I would ask all of you to keep Captain Kraft's family in your thoughts and prayers as we adjourn in his memory.
Mr. Davis.
Madam Speaker and members, the first adjourn in memory I have is for Don Cornelius, who was a television producer who, during the time in which he started 30 years ago, wanted to fill a void in American television where many of the African American recording artists though they may have sold millions of albums, were not allowed to display their talent on television because of that period of time in our history. American Bandstand, while it did have a few, there were many that they did not have. And so he established the Soul Train television show. Many of you may have had a chance to watch. It was the longest running television syndicated show in American television history. But it gave America an opportunity to see many of the artists that were often not shown on television. In addition to that, he established two other television programs, Lady of Soul, which featured female artists, and also the Soul Train Music Awards show. And like the American Music Awards and the Grammys, this was a show that featured artists often while they were purchased and heard on radio, not seen on television. And so after his 30 years of service to American television, Don Cornelius gave America not only an opportunity for African American artists in general to be seen, but in particular, he helped to highlight an unrecognized portion of American musical talent. And we will sorely miss him in his absence. The second adjourned in memory I'd like to give is on behalf of a woman who really needs no introduction to American music as well. And that is the memory of the phenomenal artist Whitney Houston, who was the daughter of a gospel artist, Cissy Houston, and the cousin of a noted Grammy Award-winning artist, Dionne Warwick. Whitney is known for many songs that may sound familiar to you, like I Want to Dance with Somebody, Who Loves Me, So Emotional, How Will I Know, I Will Always Love You, and I Look to You. As you know, Whitney passed in California, and her services took place over the past weekend. She was a 6-time Grammy Award-winning musician and probably one of the most dynamic voices of our time. So it is with the greatest of sadness that I give this adjournment in her memory, but the work that she did as a musician, female artist in this country, was unsurpassed. I conclude by saying, to her musical credit, was her recording of the Star Spangled Banner at the Super Bowl in Tampa, Florida, Super Bowl 25. This was probably one of the greatest sales of the Star Spangled Banner, where she sold and went platinum with selling over 1 million copies of the Star Spangled Banner, simply singing it at the opening of the Super Bowl 25. And so, ladies and gentlemen of the State Assembly, I ask that you honor these two individuals who just happen to be African Americans who contributed to entertainment and more specifically to music in America. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Please bring the names to the desk to be recognized. Ms. Campos has some guests here today. Ms. Campos.
Madam Chair, I'd also like to be able to adjourn, if I may, in memory of Father Donald McDonald. May I do that? Thank you.
Without objection.
I bring your attention to a great man whom I'm adjourning in memory of today. Yesterday we lost Father Donald McDonald, who was an activist, mentor, and Catholic priest in San Jose. Father McDonald greatly impacted our community with his presence, his faith, and his commitment to activism. Father McDonald is known widely in San Jose's community, the state, and the country as a mentor to Cesar Chavez, as well as a spiritual guide to Cesar throughout his activist life. Even when Cesar Chavez left the area, he would return to Our Lady of Guadalupe Church, now known as McDonald Hall, for spiritual renewal and support the United Farm Workers cause. Father McDonald was a Catholic priest sent by the San Francisco Archdiocese to work with farm workers. Father McDonald organized a new parish in Si Se Puede. In the 1950s, Father McDonald brought a church structure and asked the Chavez and Medina family, along with other parishioners, to move the structure to the site to become Our Lady of Guadalupe Church, which today is known as McDonald Hall. After witnessing Cesar Chavez's leadership in establishing the new church, Father McDonald identified Cesar Chavez as a potential community leader and became a mentor and teacher to him, introducing him to theories of nonviolence and teachings of Gandhi, as well as Catholic theology. Father McDonald was instrumental in the development of Cesar Chavez as the leader that we know today. Father McDonald was an incredible leader to us all, and his presence will be missed in San Jose, but his spirit will live in our community, and his legacy will continue to impact people from generations to come. Now I would like to introduce, and I'd ask them to stand, Youth Build from San Jose, California, if they can stand. This organization trains youth, men and women, to work in the construction industry so that they can obtain their high school diploma in San Jose. We thank you for being here, and thank you, members, for allowing me to introduce these fine men and women to you. Thank you.
Mr. Bell, for what purpose do you rise?
Members, I'd also rise in honor and memory of Father Donald McDonald. My personal history with Father McDonald goes to my mother was a volunteer for Father McDonald in working in the community. And when in the 50s, she took a young son of hers to work in the community with her. And it was part of my earliest education in the issues of social justice. So he did touch my life and in my family's life. And as well as mentioned, our community. It is a great loss to our country, our state, and San Jose in the passing of Father Donald McDonald. And I urge adjournment in his memory. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Again, the Appropriations Committee will be meeting immediately upon adjournment in the Rules Committee room. Rules Committee room, Appropriations Committee. I am ready to entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Calderon moves. Mr. Hagman seconds that this House stands adjourned until Thursday, January 23rd at 9 a.m. Quorum call is lifted.